What happens when one of entertainment's most enduring legends sits across from daytime TV's most controversial panel, and everything unravels in real time? When years of buried industry grudges collide with a panel known for ambush-style questioning, the result is a televised meltdown unlike anything the audience or the hosts expected. What you're about to hear is the story of a confrontation so shocking, so volatile, and so revealing that it has already cemented itself as one of the most unforgettable moments in talk show history. This is the explosive tale of Sher versus The View, a clash that is still being dissected, replayed, and debated long after the cameras stopped rolling. The day began like any other inside The View's bustling studio. The team moved with mechanical precision. Lights were adjusted, microphones checked, and the hosts cycled through their makeup, touch-ups, and pre-show banter. The iconic curved desk, famous for arguments, walk-off, and viral TV moments, waited for another episode to begin. But today wasn't just another episode. Today would become a landmark moment in daytime television. Sher was slated for the second segment, a promotional stop for a bold new memoir, Unfiltered, 5 Decades of Truth. At 68, she remained a powerhouse. Over 100 million albums sold, an Oscar, multiple Grammys, and a career stretching across half a century. Sher wasn't just famous. She had become a cultural monument, a survivor of every attempt to silence or sideline her. And she never bowed, not to critics, not to industry gatekeepers, not to anyone who tried to dim her fire. She had endured blacklisting in the 70s for her political stances. She had faced vicious tabloid attacks on her personal life, relentless commentary on her appearance, and a cold sting of industry sexism that tried to write her off the moment she turned 30. She even received death threats for supporting LGBTQ rights long before it was considered safe or popular to do so. Sher had gone up against powerful men, unfair systems, and cultural prejudice, and she had emerged victorious every single time. But the hosts of The View, intentionally or not, seemed to have forgotten exactly who they were dealing with. Joy Behar, known for her razor-sharp tongue, was quieter than usual during the morning preparations. Those familiar with her recognized the signs. She was plotting something. Whoopi Goldberg, the show's stabilizing presence, seemed off, more distant, more unreadable. Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Anna Navarro exchanged glances that hinted at an interview strategy more calculated than standard celebrity chit-chat. A trap was forming, and Sher, walking in with confidence and grace, had no idea. She stepped onto the set to a wave of applause, her aura instantly commanding the room. Dressed in a sleek black blazer over a shimmering silver top, her long hair cascading around her shoulders, she carried the ease of someone who had owned stages for decades. The hosts rose to greet her, offering warm smiles and firm handshakes. To the casual viewer, nothing seemed amiss. But the cameras caught everything. The slight stiffness in Sunny's posture, the overly rehearsed cheer in Joy's smile, the exchanged looks between Anna and the producers. The energy shifted. Sher wasn't walking into a friendly interview. She was stepping into an ambush. Still, the segment began harmlessly enough. Whoopi asked about the memoir, about Sher's enduring career, and about her recent tour. Sher answered with her signature charm. Witty, thoughtful, polished, drawing genuine laughter from the crowd. It felt like any other talk show appearance, until the air changed. Joy Behar leaned forward, and the atmosphere froze. So, Sher, she began, her voice dripping with something sharper than curiosity. You've been in this business for over 50 years. You've seen it all. But tell us, how have you managed to stay relevant after all this time? The word hit the room like a slap. Not successful, not iconic, not influential. And in that moment, the real interview began. Sher's expression changed in the slightest, almost invisible flicker, yet unmistakable to anyone who watched her career unfold through decades of battles. Her smile stayed politely in place, but her eyes sharpened, narrowing just enough to signal danger. It was the same look she wore in 1975 when an interviewer asked if, at age 32, she was too old to be desirable. Every time that expression appeared, history followed. Legendary history. Well, Joy, Sher replied, her voice smooth but laced with unmistakable steel. Staying true to who I am has kept me grounded. I've never needed to create drama or chase controversy for attention. My work speaks loudly enough on its own. That one line sent a ripple through the room. The cameras caught everything. The subtle looks passing between the hosts, the shifting of chairs, the tightening of shoulders. Whoopi's usual composure cracked, discomfort pulling at her posture. Sarah forced a smile that seemed more like a grimace. Sonny leaned in, eyes narrowing, sensing an opening. Ana Navarro straightened her notes with a sudden urgency, preparing for the next blow. The ambush had begun. Ana, filling in as the fifth host and clearly eager to prove herself, struck first. "That's interesting, Sher," she said, her tone edged with challenge. "Because some people would say your recent social media posts have stirred up quite a bit of controversy. You've been extremely outspoken about certain political figures, haven't you?" The temperature in the studio seemed to drop instantly. Camera operators repositioned themselves, sensing the storm forming. Producers in the control room leaned forward, recognizing a moment that could erupt into viral television. Even the audience, who had come expecting a light-hearted celebrity chat, could feel the tension thickening around them. The electric charge in the air right before thunder cracks opened the sky. Sher straightened her back, her posture shifting into something more formal, more fortified. Her hands, once relaxed in her lap, moved to grip the arms of her chair. Those who knew her recognized the transformation. The calm before she met conflict head-on, the quiet bracing of a woman who had spent her entire life fighting for her voice. "I've always used my platform to speak on issues that matter to me," Sher answered, steady and unshaken. "If that bothers some people, that's their discomfort to deal with, not mine." It was a line in the sand, a clear warning, but the panel ignored it. Joy leaned closer, her smile now fully stripped of politeness. "Don't you think celebrities should stick to entertaining," she pressed, "and leave politics to the politicians? I mean, what exactly qualifies your comment on complex policy issues?" The tone was unmistakable. The message was obvious. Know your place. Stay quiet. Be pretty. Be pleasant. Entertain. It was an attitude Sher had been battling for 5 decades, an effort to silence women, to shrink them, to remind them of their limits. And she felt the familiar fire ignite. She had heard this from presidents, producers, executives, and journalists far more formidable than Joy Behar. She had never once swallowed it then, and she wasn't about to now. "That's rich," Sher shot back, her voice slicing through the studio with surgical precision. "Coming from a show that literally thrives on political commentary. So it's acceptable to discuss politics, unless the opinion doesn't match yours? Is that the rule?" The audience gasped audibly. The interview had shattered. The masks were off. This wasn't conversation anymore. This was warfare. The hosts exchanged frantic looks, realizing the situation was slipping from their control. Whoopi stepped in quickly, trying to recenter the tone with her calm, authoritative voice. "Now! Sure, we're just trying to have a conversation. There's no need to get defensive." The word landed like another weapon. Defensive. A classic tactic. Reduce a woman's justified anger to emotional instability. Dismiss her power by framing her as irrational. Sher's eyes flashed with lightning. "Are we having a conversation?" she asked sharply. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like an interrogation designed to make me look bad. The coordinated attack is pretty hard to miss." The truth detonated in the middle of the stage. The hosts froze. Their act of innocent curiosity collapsed. Sarah Haynes, visibly sweating under the studio lights, tried to pivot, choosing a different angle entirely, but one far crueler. "Well, speaking of looking bad," Sarah attempted, her voice wobbling with fake casualness, "there have been rumors circulating about your personal life recently. Care to address those for our viewers?" Sarah asked, her tone attempting casual curiosity, but landing like a blade. The entire studio fell into a suffocating silence. It wasn't just a bold question. It was a boundary crossed. A moment when the tone shifted from aggressive interviewing to outright character assassination. Personal attacks hiding behind the mask of journalism. Gossip dressed up as fact. And Sher realized with chilling clarity that she hadn't walked into an interview. She had walked into a trap. 3 cameras captured it in razor-sharp detail. The flicker of hurt that washed over her face. First came the sting of betrayal, The shock of being invited as a guest only to be ambushed like an adversary. Then confusion, as if she couldn't believe the words she just heard. And finally, the emotion that settled over her like a gathering storm. A fury deeper and more explosive than anything the view had ever provoked. "Excuse me?" Sher said, her voice frightfully calm. Each syllable landed with surgical precision. "What exactly are you implying, Sarah?" But Sarah pushed forward, falsely emboldened by the presence of her co-hosts. Before Sher could respond, Sonny Hostin jumped in, dripping with manufactured compassion. "We're just pointing out," Sonny said softly, "that for someone who talks a lot about authenticity, there have been questions about your relationships and business choices. Don't your fans deserve transparency?" The rumors hung in the air like toxic smoke, vague, weaponized, and intentionally crafted to smear. And something inside sure snapped. Decades of tabloid invasions. Decades of reporters twisting her words. Decades of attacks on everything from her appearance to her politics. All of it condensed into one moment. They had invited her onto national television, smiling like allies, only to drag her through mud using anonymous whispers and insinuations. It was a betrayal of trust and of her humanity. "You want to talk about authenticity?" Sher shot back, her voice rising, her legendary composure cracking like glass under pressure. "Let's talk about a show that claims to champion women, while tearing them down in front of millions. That's the authenticity you're promoting." Panic rippled through the panel. Ana Navarro paled, her earlier bravado evaporating. Joy's lips tightened. Her trademark went nowhere to be found. Whoopi tried to salvage the situation, but even she sounded unsure of her own defense. "We're not tearing anyone down, Sher," Whoopi insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "We're just asking the questions people want answered." Sher let out a cold, bitter laugh, a sound that sucked the warmth out of the room. "Legitimate questions? You're calling rumors and character attacks legitimate journalism? This right here, this toxic theater you're pulling, is exactly what's killing real conversation in this country." The tension spiked. The air grew heavy. Camera operators instinctively zoomed in, capturing every flash of anger. Sound engineers scrambled to adjust levels. In the control room, producers stared wide-eyed, realizing they were witnessing the kind of moment that would be clipped, replayed, dissected, and memed for years. Neither side was backing down, and Sher was far from finished. Joy Behar, sensing her authority slipping, made a decision that would become the worst mistake of the entire broadcast. She leaned back, her voice dripping with condescension she likely mistook for wisdom. "Look, sure, we get that you're passionate, but maybe it's time to accept that your moment has passed. The industry has moved on. Maybe it's time you do too." The words didn't just land. They hit hard. They echoed every dismissal Sher had ever endured. Too old, out of touch, past her prime. The same insults she'd heard at 30, then at 40, at 50, and now again at 68. But this time, after half a lifetime of people telling her she was too much, too loud, too old, too opinionated, Sher reached her breaking point. It was visible to every lens in the studio. Her hands, which had been gripping the chair, released. Her shoulders squared, no longer defensive. Her expression hardened into something deadly calm. Purpose sharpened into a blade. The polished public persona slipped away by choice. In its place stood the woman who had survived an industry that tried to bury her 1,000 times and failed every single time. "My moment has passed," Sher repeated, her voice trembling, not from weakness, but from the sheer force of rage held barely in place. "My moment has passed? I've been smashing ceilings and fighting battles while you were still figuring out how to read a teleprompter without sounding like robots." The hosts flinched as if struck. Sher's voice, honed by decades of commanding arenas, stadiums, and global audiences, rolled through the studio with a force that couldn't be taught, bought, or rehearsed. It wasn't loudness. It was presence. It was authority. It was the unmistakable sound of a woman who had survived wars the panel could barely imagine. "I was selling out arenas before most of you were even born," Sher thundered, her voice rising with each sentence. "I was risking my career fighting for civil rights when it was dangerous. I stood up for LGBTQ lives when it cost me contracts, friendships, and safety. I spoke truth to power when speaking truth could actually end your career. And you, she pointed at the desk, think your tiny daytime platform gives you the right to tell me my time is up. Joy tried to interrupt, a weak attempt to regain control of the spiraling moment, but Sher cut through her words like a blade. Don't you dare. She rose from her chair, towering over the curved desk, her posture radiating power while the host instinctively shrank back. Don't you dare try to silence me now. I've earned my voice. I've paid for it, in blood, sweat, tears, and battles against people exactly like you. Chaos rippled across the set. Security at the edges stiffened, unsure whether they should step in. Camera operators kept rolling, knowing they were filming a once-in-a-career moment. The audience sat frozen, eyes wide, hands over mouths. And the hosts, who had entered this segment believing they could box in a legend, now looked like prey cornered by the wrong lion. Sarah Haynes, her voice trembling, attempted to steady the situation. Sure, maybe we're all getting a bit heated. Maybe we should take a breath. Don't you dare tell me to take a breath. Sher's voice snapped like ice cracking under pressure. You question my relevance, my integrity, throw trash at my personal life, and then you want to calm down? Sweetheart, let me educate you on relevance. I was selling out Madison Square Garden before you even learned to tie your shoes. And I'll still be performing long after this circus you call journalism is forgotten. Ana Navarro. Try to reclaim professionalism. Push back weakly. There's no need to get personal. Sure, we're professionals here. Sher laughed. A cold, devastating sound that echoed through the studio. Professionals? This? Ambushing a guest with gossip and cheap shots? If this is professionalism, then the bar is in the basement. The shockwave of her words rippled across the panel. The View had weathered storms before, political clashes, heated debates, celebrity tension. But nothing like this. This wasn't an argument. It was a dismantling. A masterclass in controlled fury from someone who had spent 50 years surviving an industry built to destroy her. Whoopi, sensing the show slipping out of reach, tried once more to rein things in. Okay, that's enough. We have to keep this civil. Sher turned on her, and the look in her eyes made Whoopi physically recoil. Civil? Sher hissed. Where was civility when you threw rumors about my relationships on national television? Where was civility when you question my business dealings with zero evidence? You dish it out, but you crumble when someone pushes back. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. Joy, red-faced and trembling with a mix of rage and embarrassment, spat out her final attack, an attack she likely thought would put Sher in her place. Maybe this is exactly why people question your stability. This tantrum isn't iconic. It's unstable. It's diva behavior. The words detonated in the room. Everything went still. Even breathing seemed to pause. Questioning someone's mental stability on live television was the nuclear option, the lowest tactic, the last bullet in the gun. Sher stood perfectly motionless for 3 long seconds. Then she stepped toward the desk, and her presence filled the studio like a gathering storm. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but far more terrifying than any scream. My stability, she said slowly, each word sharpened to a lethal point. Now you want to talk about my stability? She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. I've survived being blacklisted. I've survived death threats. I've survived predatory executives who tried to end my career for speaking my mind. I've survived decades of people just like you trying to discredit me. And you think your little mean girls table is going to break me? Then came the moment that would be replayed millions of times. Sunny Hostin, either too committed or too foolish to back down, delivered the single worst line of the entire ambush. Well, given your history of dramatic relationships and public controversies, it's not exactly unreasonable to question. Stop. Right. There. Sher's voice cracked through the room like thunder. Several people physically jolted. A sound engineer fumbled and slapped a fader the wrong way. A camera operator stumbled backward. In the control room, someone dropped their coffee, splattering paperwork. Don't you dare. Her voice vibrated with an intensity that felt like it could shake the walls. Don't you dare drag my relationships into this. Don't you dare pretend my personal life is free game for your ratings. You want to question my stability? Let me tell you what's actually unreasonable. She looked magnificent in her fury, larger than life, a supernova of truth and anger, because this wasn't performance. This wasn't theatrics. This was a legend who had finally had enough. The moment the words left Sher's mouth, the atmosphere on set fractured. The hosts jerked back as if an invisible shockwave had hit them. What filled the studio wasn't just volume. It was the force of someone who had spent a lifetime commanding arenas, someone whose voice could silence stadiums. It was power, it was presence, and it was unmistakably real. But this was only the beginning. Sher leaned forward, eyes blazing. I was headlining sold-out tours before any of you were even in grade school, she declared, the conviction in her voice unmistakable. I marched for civil rights when it came with real consequences. I stood up for LGBTQ people long before it was safe, popular, or profitable. I confronted presidents, executives, and critics who actually had the power to ruin careers. And now you think your daytime talk show gives you permission to declare that my time is over. Joy attempted to interject, her voice sharp with panic, but Sher wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Don't even try, Sher snapped, rising tall over the desk as the host shrank beneath her presence. Don't you dare try to shut me down. I've earned a right to speak, and I've paid for that right with decades of fighting people exactly like you. The entire studio dissolved into chaos. Security lingered at the edge of the lights, uncertain whether to step in. Cameras kept rolling. Operators instinctively knew they were capturing a moment that would be replayed for years. The audience sat motionless, some literally slack-jawed, and the hosts, who had entered the interview believing they could control the narrative, now looked like they had unleashed a hurricane they couldn't contain. Sarah, voice trembling, tried to defuse the explosion. Sure, maybe we're all just getting a little too heated. Maybe we should all take a breath. But that was the wrong thing to say. Don't you dare tell me to breathe, she hissed, each word ice with fury. You question my relevance, my integrity, my personal life, and then expect me to sit here and calm down? Let me tell you about relevance, sweetheart. I sold out Madison Square Garden before you even learned how to tie your shoes. Anna Navarro, voice thin but defiant, attempted to salvage her professionalism. There's no need to make this personal. Sure. We're professionals. We're just doing our jobs. The laugh Sher let out was almost cruel in its precision, sharp enough to leave marks. Professionals? This? Ambushing a guest with tabloid garbage and thinly disguised insults? If any of you had ever met professionalism, it wouldn't recognize you back. The shot landed with brutal clarity. The tension tightened like a wire. Whoopi tried once more to take control, summoning her signature calm. Okay, that's enough. We need to keep this civil. Sher turned her gaze to her, and the effect made Whoopi physically lean back. Civil? Sher repeated slowly. Where was the civility when you people were spreading rumors about me? Where was the civility when you dragged my name over your show without a sliver of evidence? You played dirty, but you crumble the second someone pushes back. The hypocrisy is astounding. Joy, red-faced and trembling, delivered one last strike. Maybe this is why people question your stability. This behavior doesn't look like an icon. It looks like a diva who can't handle criticism. The entire room went silent. It felt as though the air had been sucked out of the building. Sher didn't speak for 3 long seconds. When she finally did, her voice was soft, terrifyingly soft. My stability, she repeated, each syllable stamped with lethal clarity. You dare question my stability? I've survived blacklists, death threats, executives who tried to end my career, decades of slander, sexism, and suppression. I've outlasted entire systems built to silence women, and you think you can break me? Sunny, perhaps emboldened or simply unable to retreat, stepped forward with the worst mistake of the day. Well, given your history with dramatic relationships and public controversies, it's not unreasonable to ask. Sher's voice detonated like thunder. Stop. Right. There. The sound reverberated through the studio. startling crew members and sending a ripple of shock through the control room. Someone dropped a cup of coffee. A camera operator flinched backward. "Don't you dare bring my personal relationships into this," Sher roared. "Don't you dare pretend my private life is entertainment for your ratings. You want to talk about unreasonable? I'll tell you what's unreasonable. What's unreasonable is a panel of women who preach empowerment, spending their time tearing down another woman for sport. What's unreasonable is calling this journalism when it's nothing but gossip dressed up as news. And what's truly unreasonable is thinking you can gang up on me 5-1 and I'll sit here and take it." Anna tried again, barely able to get the words out. "Sure, we know you're upset, but attacking us personally." "Attacking you personally?" Sher fired back. "You spent 15 minutes attacking my character, my relevance, my stability, and now you want to play the victims? The hypocrisy is unbelievable." Panic rippled across the panel. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Sonny looked ill. Anna was frozen in terror. Joy sat stiffly, unable to mask her embarrassment. Whoopi looked like she was watching the show collapse in real time. Joy attempted one last pivot. "We're sorry if you feel." "There's no if," Sher snapped. "You ambushed me. You slandered me. And now you're gaslighting me as if this is all in my imagination. Believe me, America sees exactly what you did." Whoopi's voice was low, steady but visibly strained. "Sher, I need you to lower your voice. This behavior." "You need me?" Sher growled, incredulous. "After the way you all attacked me? After you circled me like vultures? And now I'm the problem? The audacity is unbelievable." Sarah, sobbing now, whispered, "We didn't mean for it to go this far. We just wanted a conversation." "This wasn't a conversation," Sher thundered. "This was a coordinated character assassination, and you expected me to just smile and take it. You wanted to bully me like you've bullied others." Then came the final strike. Anna, trembling but reckless, said, "Well, if you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Maybe it's time you retire." She shouldn't have said it. Sher's voice erupted like a volcano. "Tough questions? You call lies and manufacture scandals tough questions? Please, you wouldn't recognize a real question if it slapped you across your surgically enhanced faces." The studio froze. Joy choked on a gasp. Whoopi stiffened. Sonny winced. Sarah dissolved into tears. Anna looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Sher stood like an avenger, radiating a power so intense it felt physical. The microphones distorted under the force of her words. The entire studio quaked with tension. Joy made one final, trembling attempt to regain ground. "Don't talk to us like that. We've been doing..." But Sher's laugh cut her off, a laugh filled with rage, triumph, and undeniable dominance. Sher leaned forward, her voice slicing through the air with an authority that drowned out every protest. "You've been hosting this show for a handful of years," she said, eyes blazing. "I've spent longer than your combined careers breaking records, shattering ceilings, and fighting battles you can't even imagine. I was changing the world while you were still learning how to read cue cards without whispering the words under your breath." Before anyone could react, Whoopi stood, a move she probably believed would reestablish control. Instead, it became one of the most infamous missteps in live television history. Sher pivoted toward her, her presence so commanding that Whoopi instinctively stepped back. "Sit down." The command hit with such force that Whoopi obeyed before she even realized she'd moved. The studio collectively inhaled as Sher continued, voice sharp enough to leave marks. "You, of all people, should know better. You're supposed to be the level head here, yet somehow you become just another cog in their little mean girl machine. Shame on you." The studio unraveled. Security hovered tensely at the edges, hands twitching near their radios, unsure whether this verbal explosion was about to turn physical. The audience sat frozen in riveted horror. Every camera kept rolling, because every operator knew this moment would become television legend. Through tears, Sonny attempted one final rescue. "Sure, please, we can talk this out. We can handle this like adults." "There is nothing to work out," Sher thundered, her voice pushing the sound system to its limits. "You revealed exactly who you were the second I stepped onto this set. You're not journalists. You're scavengers, picking apart people's lives for cheap ratings. Sarah was openly sobbing now, her mascara streaking as the weight of the moment crushed her composure. Anna, earlier so bold, sat frozen in shock, wishing she could melt into floor. Joy's expression had shifted from smug confidence to the sick realization that the situation had spiraled far beyond her control. Sher pressed on. You want to hear what real tough questions sound like. Her voice echoed with the weight of half a century in the spotlight. Here's one. How do you sleep at night, knowing your entire career is built on destroying other women? Here's another. What lesson are you teaching young girls who watch this show? That the only way to rise is by tearing someone else down. Joy inhaled to object, but Sher turned toward her. The look alone stopped Joy mid-breath. I'm not finished. The word snapped through the air like a crack of lightning. The studio fell silent instantly. You think sitting behind this desk with choreographed smiles and pre-planned ambushes makes you invincible? You think I'm going to sit here like some washed-up relic and let you poke me for entertainment? Sher took a step toward the desk. All 5 hosts recoiled, shrinking back as though facing a tidal wave. You want to talk about has-beens? Let me educate you. Her voice dropped into a lethal calm that penetrated deeper than any scream. I've sold more than 100 million records. I've won every major award in existence. Oscar, Grammy, Emmy, Tony. I've marched for civil rights, risking my life and career. I've stood up for LGBTQ people when it meant losing money, contracts, and safety. I've spoken truth to power when power had the ability to end me. She paused, letting every accomplishment pound into the walls of the studio. And what have you done? The question landed like a sledgehammer. What have any of you done except tear down women who threaten you? What legacy are you leaving behind besides cruelty packaged as commentary? A suffocating silence spread through the room. Even the crew had stopped moving, like the entire building was holding its breath. Sher's presence filled every inch of space, stripping away the show's polished illusions. Desperate to regain control, Whoopi tried again. Sher, I think we need to go to a commercial break. No. Sher's voice was a whisper sharpened into a blade. You don't get to think. Not now. You've made enough decisions today, and look where they've led. Chaos. Humiliation. This disaster that you created. Then Sher turned to face the main camera, her posture straight, her expression raw but resolute. A master performer delivering truth without artifice. To everyone watching at home, she said, her voice steady with conviction, what you're seeing right now is what happens when fake journalism collides with real integrity. This is what it looks like when mediocrity tries and fails to destroy excellence. This is what happens when people who've never built anything dare to attack someone who spent 50 years creating art, breaking boundaries, and fighting for justice. The camera zoomed in slowly, capturing every detail. The fury, yes, but also the heartbreak, the exhaustion, the years of pushing back against the same old battles. And this. Sher gestured toward the trembling panel with a sweep of her hand. This is exactly why women in this industry still have to fight tooth and nail to be respected. This is the moment cowardice finally met accountability. No cameras to hide behind. No corporate shield to protect them. Just truth, raw, undeniable, and delivered without mercy. Sher gathered her things slowly, gracefully, with a level of composure that made the chaos around her look childish. She picked up her purse, adjusted her jacket, and carried herself with the calm authority of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering storms. She wasn't escaping. She wasn't rattled. She was leaving on her terms, timing, tone, and dignity fully under her control. And then she stopped, because legends don't walk out without leaving a truth that echoes. You want to know the difference between me and all of you? She said, pausing long enough to make sure every host met her eyes they would remember for the rest of their careers. I've never needed to tear down another woman to feel important. I've never had to spread lies just to stay in the headlines. I've never needed a table full of backup singers to make myself look powerful. Her words hit harder than anything they had planned. I built everything I have on talent, discipline, and integrity. What did you build yours on? The silence that followed wasn't just awkward. It was the sound of people realizing they no longer controlled the narrative. Anna tried one more time, desperate, shaky, clinging to the illusion of control. Sure, wait. Wait for what? Sher's voice sliced through the room like a blade. Wait, so you can rewrite what happened? Wait so you can twist this into a misunderstanding. Wait so you can gaslight me and your viewers into believing this was an ambush. She stepped toward the edge of the set, perfectly lit by the studio lights, looking every bit the icon she had been for 50 years. The contrast was brutal. One woman standing tall, poised, and unshakable, and 5 hosts hunched behind their desk, suddenly small, suddenly exposed. I lasted 5 decades in this industry because I stayed real, she declared, her voice ringing like truth made of iron. Because I stood up to bullies. Because I never let people who thought they were untouchable silence me. She let the weight of her next words land with precision. You tried to break me today. You tried to humiliate me. You tried to destroy my reputation on national television. A slow, fierce smile crossed her face. And in that smile was the moment the entire show lost a fight. But all you really did was remind the world why I never lose. With that, she turned toward the exit, head high, shoulders back, every step radiating authority. Behind her, the 5 hosts sat stunned and hollow, the ruins of their orchestrated takedown scattered around them like broken glass. They hadn't just failed. They had publicly imploded. At the door, Sher paused one last time. The camera caught the look on her face, not vindictive, not gloating, but absolutely sure of her moral high ground. Good luck explaining this to your audience, she said. Good luck explaining how a celebration of my career turned into a character assassination attempt. And good luck living with the fact that millions of people just watched you expose yourselves. The door closed behind her with a sharp, echoing click that felt like a verdict. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the stunned silence, the thick tension, the realization settling over everyone. This wasn't just a bad moment for the show. This was a catastrophe. In the control room, panic spread. Producers argued about cutting the commercial, about PR strategy, about how to recover from the disaster unfolding live. On set, the hosts sat frozen, processing the fact that their plan had detonated in their own faces. What had started as a routine interview had exploded into a masterclass in legendary control. Sher walked into an ambush and transformed it into their worst nightmare. She faced 5 hostile opponents in their own house and walked away stronger than she entered, her dignity sharpened, her legacy strengthened, her power undeniable. The show would now face consequences from viewers, from sponsors, from the network itself. They had tried to diminish a legend and instead handed her the perfect stage to prove why she is a legend. Sher left that studio unbroken, unbothered, and more iconic than ever. And the hosts? They sat in the wreckage they created, knowing this moment would define them far more painfully than it would ever define her. What began as an ambush ended as a reckoning. What they hoped would be her downfall became her triumph. What they planned as their viral moment became her greatest victory. The legend spoke, and the world listened.